Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today, I am so honored because I am joined by somebody that's a huge influence, not only in my life, but my son's life as well. The amazing Brent Terhune. How you doing today, man?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, dude, this is so amazing to me. For those of you that don't know Brent, he is a comedian and a podcaster from Indianapolis, home of the Colts. He's been featured in the Dry Bar comedy. He's been in Variety magazine. He has 2 albums on Apple Music and Spotify. You probably know him more as his character, but I want to talk about Brent a little bit. What got you started in comedy? What made you want to finally kick it in the ass and start rolling with it?
Yeah, I was 16 in high school. So my first time performing was at high school. They had things called coffee houses. So people did acoustic guitar and poetry. And I just went up and did stand up. I never knew how to do it. I just tried to put together some stories or whatever. So then from there, I would host Battle of the Bands and talent shows and open up for the improv troupe at school, which they just called Whose Line Is It Anyway? They didn't even change it. They were just like, people don't know what improv was, so we'll just call it Whose Line Is It Anyway? And so I did that kind of stuff. And then eventually got into the comedy clubs when I was 17. You had to be 18, but nobody ever said anything. And I wasn't like I didn't have a monocle being like 1 large alcohol, please, so nobody said anything. And so, so far so good. I've been a quote full-time comedian since I finished school in 2012, college. And then, you can do that if you live with my mom for a while. If you have the chance, I suggest living with my mom for longer than you should. And then, yeah, it's been good so far.
Dude, and it's amazing because this is where technology can be super helpful, in the spreading of a platform. And I do have all of Brent's social media links down here in the description, as well as all the links for his albums. So make sure you're checking those out if you haven't already. Now, I don't want to get too much into the character for people that haven't seen it, but what was your inspiration for your emotional support beer guy? I don't want to say too much about it, but what was your inspiration for him?
It's a political satire, so odds are some people watching this won't like it and some will. But it was like people burning Nikes and stuff when back 5 or 6 years ago now, they were burning Nikes, and I was watching people do that, being like, oh, you could donate that, or you could just wear it because you already paid for it. So I did that in my backyard with stuff I got from Goodwill. And it was never like an intention of like, oh, now I can do this character. I can do this over and over. It was just a one-off thing. But then those types of people are everywhere all the time, ranting in a truck. They're marching and protesting, boycott. I love the chant. Well, I love when I get to boycott something as a character, because a lot of times it was stuff that he wasn't using in the first place, but now he's up in arms about it. That kind of stuff is that's the character in a nutshell.
And what I love about it is you use things that were inspirational to us when the YouTube was first around, like the recent Unforgivable video. Like, dude, I cannot tell you, like, me and my boy Bill fell off our chairs laughing at the end when you did the black and white. After you already had us when you did the fries for free. Like, you had us at that point, dude. But when you went to black and white at the end, I fell off my chair, man. So before, we're about to talk about why we're here, but I just wanted to say before that, thank you, because it really is true. Laughter is the best medicine, man. And whenever you put out a new video and I get that notification, I'm super stoked. So please continue to do what you do. I know sometimes it can just seem like it's a repetitive thing, but it really is an inspiration to a lot of us out here that, horror and comedy are so closely knit because they're all about timing. If you have bad timing in either one of them, you're probably not going to succeed. But when you're someone that has great at comedy, you're probably going to be a great horror writer too, man. So hopefully I can get some horror sketches from you sometime in the future. Well, before that though, we need to know how horror started for you, my friend. So I want to go back to the past, talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Brent, the first horror movie you watched was?
Scream.
Our buddy Ghostface here, and he is still kicking ass today. So,
dude.
Do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I was thinking about this because I know the movie came out in '96, but I know I didn't see it in the theater. It was probably a VHS copy at that point. So back then at '96, it would take a year for it to even hit VHS. So maybe '97, '98, which would have put me at 8, 9, 10 years old went too young probably to see it. But then, you know, my mom showed it to me, and I do another podcast called They're Coming to Get You, and we did The Exorcist, and I was telling my mom, oh, we have this Exorcist one coming up, and she's like, oh yeah, your brother made me turn that off. He got scared. And I said, well, how old was he? And she was like, 8. I was like, why did you show an 8-year-old The Exorcist? You know? So I guess it runs in my family that you show children movies they shouldn't be seeing way too young.
It's funny you say that, and I don't want to be a broken record for people that have watched the podcast repeatedly, but I grew up in a video store. My mom and dad owned a video store called Downtown Video. It was a little mom and pop shop. And The Exorcist is the only movie my mother ever shut off. She was like, nope, this is too much. We're not doing this.
Yeah.
And I remember, you know, I got a little bit older and I was like, I got to watch that movie. I got to watch that movie. And I watched it and I was like, man, I did not have to watch that movie. That movie scared the shit out of me. I was like 10 or 11 and it terrified me, man.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a slow burn for that. There's about I think it's about a 2-hour movie. There's maybe an hour of, you know, there's scares, but when it ramps up, you're like, oh, they should have just told me at the beginning and I wouldn't have watched this at all.
Right. But I mean, like, Scream is seriously, like, I call Scream the Green Day of horror movies. Like, it really made horror movies cool at a time where horror was really on the decline, where Green Day made punk rock cool when Dookie came out. You know, it was cool to like punk rock at that point. And I love the effect that Scream had on the horror genre. Whether you love or you hate it, you look at the horror movies that came out the 3 years before Scream and the 3 years after, and you cannot deny what a huge impact it had on the horror genre. Now we're talking about being super effective, and Scream it still holds up to this day. Obviously, it's an iconic movie. What would you say the scene that affected you the most was?
I mean, it would probably have to be that first scene of the first 11, 12, 13 minutes of the Drew Barrymore stuff. And it was lost on me at the time being a kid. It's you're like, oh, Drew Barrymore's on the cover, so she must be the star of it. That was lost on me, you know, because she got killed off. And in my head, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. On to the next kill. But if I were to watch that as an adult, like, well, they just killed the lead person, you know? So that just a shock of that. But then also that's a mini movie. If you just cut that was the end of the film, you could take that to festivals and show that, and it's a standalone, and it's so iconic. You know, there's, you know, Scary Movie. However many movies have been, you know, spun off from that. You know, was called Scary Movie. Scream was originally. Yep. And then to have the mask and the just very iconic, and kind of, if you look at horror movie posters from that when Scream came out to the rest of them, like they're all in like that flying V, like geese, like Halloween H2O. What's the Faculty? There's more that I'm forgetting, but like you can.
I know what you did last summer. Urban Legend, like all these movies bit on what Scream did because they seen. And honestly, I could even say that Wes Craven's New Nightmare really took a bite out of, you know, the meta world. And then Wes Craven seen what happened with New Nightmare, and he was like, well, let's just dive in, man. Let's just make Scream, Scary Movie, as you said, what it was supposed to be called originally, and dive right in. And he revitalized the horror genre at a point where it was really low. And we know that this, and like you said, one big thing that people forget is Drew Barrymore was not only the lady on the cover, she was the biggest name in the movie at the time. And she was the one going around to talk shows and stuff like that, talking to people before the movie had come out. So you're right. And in us, it was lost. It was just, oh, the girl at the beginning died. But to an adult, you're like, man, the person pitching this movie to everybody died in the first 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, that's a risk.
I'm a big wrestling fan. That's a wrestling thing to do, is to keep, and wrestling, they call it you don't break kayfabe, you don't break character. So for her to go around and be the poster child of the movie when really she's dead in 12 minutes, like it's like, that's a gutsy thing to do, because you could potentially make a lot of people mad.
Right. Like, man, they killed the little girl from E.T. in the first 11 minutes of this movie. I don't know what to think. So we know which scene affected you the most, Brent, but what would you say your favorite scene from Scream is?
My favorite, probably, I guess the ending at Stu's house, when it's Stu and Skeet Ulrich. I'm calling one by the character name and one by his real name.
Stu and Billy.
Yeah, Stu and Billy. Just the whole, I love, Stu playing up, my parents are gonna be so mad at me. My mom and dad are gonna be so mad. And then, just his almost overacting is great. I love the whole scene in the kitchen, and then you kind of get, that one is following the leader, like Stu is following Billy, and that guy's certifiably crazy, and the other is just like, yeah, I'll play along with this. And I love it because they stab each other, to make it look like they've been killed or whatever, but then they still got to kill Sydney, which is the dumbest thing in the movie. Is like, why wouldn't you kill her before you stabbed each other? Now you're bleeding. I'm getting woozy here. I'm feeling woozy here. Just the dumb teenager thing of let's stab each other and let's get her,
Right. And in their mind, they're causing mental torture to her when really all they're doing is giving her time to think and plan her way out of this. So, and you're right. I mean, you even have that part right there where he's fucking hit me with the phone, Dick. And
yeah,
I agree with you where I don't think anybody could have played that role the way Matthew Lillard did.
Yeah,
he overacted it in such a perfect way that it worked out amazingly. And I think that you talk about movies that have the perfect cast. This is one of those movies where I couldn't imagine anybody else playing any of the characters in the film. So we know which scene affected you the most, obviously being the beginning, and what your favorite scene was. But now I want to go a little bit darker here on you, Brent. Obviously, as horror fans, we love the kills. We live for the kills. Which kill would you say was the one that stuck with you the most, or your favorite from Scream?
It'd probably have to be the doggy door one through the garage. And when you think about it, it's like, how strong of a garage door do you have to lift probably 120-pound girl or however heavy she is? Like, it's half unrealistic, but it's also, I've seen a bunch of horror movies, not all of them, but I had not seen something like that, since then. Probably they've kind of redone that, but that kind of kill where she's just hanging there. And then, of course, the hero finds the body later, just makes for a great visual of her hanging from that garage door.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
The only time we're having the world's biggest boobs is a downfall.
I know. Yeah. Where it's like a barb on a hook. You can get it in, but then you can't get it out.
Right, man. So obviously now Scream, at the time of recording, we are at the 5th installment. We have the new Scream coming out next year. We don't know if it's going to be Scream 2, Scream double exclamation point, Scream 6. We don't know what the hell they're going to call it. But as of time of recording, we're at 5. And I always ask this when we're doing a franchise, which of the Scream films is your personal favorite?
Probably the first one, just because of the significance. And maybe this is a question I'll ask later, but I feel like this is like the franchise as a whole is probably the most solid franchise in horror, I would say. I don't know if you would agree on that, but
I've said numerous times when it comes to continuity, consistency, and quality of film, Scream is the best horror franchise there is. I think Child's Play is my favorite franchise because it has a little bit of everything for me.
That's my wife's favorite. Over on the other side, we've got Chucky dolls and stuff. This is my big horror room, so she's a big Chucky fan.
Me too, man. I'm a huge Child's Play guy. But I agree with you when it comes to like overall quality. The worst Scream film would probably be considered one of the best in any other franchise. The worst Scream film is not Freddy's Dead. It is not Jason Takes Manhattan. It's not these movies that are just completely bad. So I agree with you there 100%.
So what do you say is the worst Scream then? Because we might be in agreement on this. 3. Yeah. I think most people say that's the worst, and it's not terrible, but it's not one.
Exactly, and that's what I try to tell people. Like, if I made 5 movies, and the worst quality of movie that I made was Scream 3, I'd consider myself a damn good writer and a damn good storyteller. You did Scream 3? Yeah, crucify me.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the next question I ask, I usually have my little buddy Ghostface here with me, but he's off filming Scream 6 now. So Ghostface on my shirt's just going to have to ask you, what's your favorite scary movie, Brent? we know your first horror movie, but what would you say your favorite horror movie of all time is?
Well, and that line was such an iconic thing too. You heard people say that, and and people
Mhm.
nowadays probably would say it and not even know what it's in relation to. But I would say my favorite scary movie's got to be Halloween. Is my favorite.
78.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, there's no denying the impact that Halloween 1978 had on the horror genre. I hear people say that it started the slasher craze. I don't agree with that. I think Psycho and Black Christmas from 74 probably started it.
Mm-hmm.
I think Halloween perfected it. And I think that it brought your slasher to the forefront, where in Psycho, you don't get a lot of Mrs. Bates, you don't get a
Yeah.
lot of her.
I think it was there
And
two kills in Psycho, maybe three.
yeah. And the
Yeah.
only one that you really, I mean, you got to see the one in the shower and then the
Yeah.
detective, which I think is one of the coolest
The
kills of all time,
overhead.
with him going down the stairs. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's so dope. But and in Black Christmas 1974, you never see the killer.
Mm-hmm.
You never see Billy. But Halloween brought you the boogeyman.
You can't kill the boogeyman.
It
Yeah.
showed you who the boogeyman was. And he's still alive today, man. Like, he's still kicking ass today. And I'm super excited for Halloween Ends. So
even when you watch 78, like you probably seen a bunch of times, like I have, you're kind of those long, open, wide shots that Carpenter has. I'm always looking in the background for Michael Myers.
mm-hmm.
I found him everywhere he is in the movie. Probably we all have, but then you look, you're like, oh, maybe he's in one of those palm trees in Illinois for no reason. Like he's back there somewhere. He's hiding. It's kind of a Where's Waldo of a movie.
And it's funny because we're both Midwest guys, and we think the same way a lot of times about these things. And like, you see the part where the girls are walking around the school and they have all their lockers on the outside. I'm like, there's no fucking way those kids are going to have their lockers outside in Illinois in December, January, February. So that's the most unrealistic thing about Halloween. You shot him 6 times, he survived, I get it, but don't tell me there's lockers outside in Illinois. Okay.
Yeah. Like when you see the kids outside eating lunch outside, I'm like, that would never happen here. What are we doing?
Make it believable, John.
Yeah.
But I will say another thing about Halloween 1978, and I've said this many times. It really showed, and Psycho did this too, and so did Jaws, the importance of what a score can do for a film.
Oh, dude, yeah.
People that have never seen Halloween know the Halloween theme.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Psycho, people know the people know the bottom of Jaws, even if they've never seen it. And these movies showed that you could take something that a lot of people overlook in film, especially back then, and make it one of the standouts of your film.
Yeah.
The score in these movies are just so great and so underrated. I have the VHS, or I'm sorry, the cassette tape of the Halloween score at home. I've had it since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And it's just so amazing, man, that these movies have stood the test of time and they're still kicking ass today. I'm so happy for the horror community, because you're a big member of the horror community too. And the amount of people in this community that are just so loving and kind and generous at cons and stuff, it's so amazing. So Brent, I've had an amazing time with you, talking about how horror started for you and where your career is going. We got the comedy, and again, all the links are down here in the description, guys. So make sure you're clicking those if you haven't listened to this guy yet. Jesus Christ, you're doing yourself an in-service if you haven't. But man, before I let you go, I always ask the same question. What we're going to do now is bounce back to Scream real quick. And what we're going to do is rank this on a skull count. Now, we're not being critics. We're not judging it on acting, score, production, nothing like that. What we're doing is strictly judging Scream on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle.
Okay.
Brett, what would your ranking of Scream be?
5.
I mean, look behind you, man.
Yeah, I mean, this whole room is that stuff, and like I remember you run down the hallway, and you got to turn on the one light, but then you run to the next light as a kid to turn that on, and then once the light is on, they can't get you. Of course, that's like it stuck with me. Of oh, Ghostface is out there. That's you don't get that as an adult much anymore. Of like, oh, he's out there, but as a kid, that's where it definitely hits.
And it's so crazy to me, because you also talked about, your infatuation with Halloween 1978, and you're also a pro wrestling fan. And, even as a kid, it's so funny because I watched pro wrestling before I didn't see Halloween till way later in life. I was probably 13 when I seen Halloween for the first time. And when I watched it, I was like, he ripped off the Undertaker, when he did his sit up.
Yeah, the sit up. Yeah.
And I was always younger. Halloween was boring to me, man. Like I thought it was white bread. I didn't completely understand and I grew up watching Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Chucky with all these inventive kills and one-liners. And then I watched Michael and I'm like, it's just a guy. Yeah. And it turns out that's when you become an adult, that's the scariest thing there is. That could be our next door neighbor.
No real motive. And a home invasion. There's a lot of home invasion movies, but that's like if you can't feel safe at home, then where can you feel safe? That's the thing is, you could be in bed, but also he's in the closet type thing.
Exactly. So, man, Brent, again, thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere, my friend. I got a couple more questions for you. Everyone else, like I said, you need to be clicking these links down here. Follow him on social media, subscribe to the YouTube, check him out on the podcast. You're going to love it. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.